Let's talk about The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. This will be my review of the book. Later I'll do more of a deep dive character video, but this will be the spoiler-free one that's safe to watch if you have not read it and are thinking about it. This is an Asian-inspired fantasy. There are a lot of martial arts and magic. The little blurb on the back says the Poppy War's darkness meets the Last Airbender's elemental magic. I have not read the Poppy War, so I can't speak to that. It does get a little dark at times. In fact, I think one of the first things I need to say about this is that this book should come with a trigger warning. Pretty much anything that could be a trigger for a woman reading this book. Not everything that's triggering happens to the main character, so it's not all super graphic. I would say the main one to be aware of going into this is a trigger for child loss, which I did not know going in, so I would like other people going into this book to know that ahead of time. The Sword of Kaigen is the place. It's the peninsula where the Theonites live. You could also say the Sword of Kaigen is the people, which is probably more accurate. The Theonites are humans descended from gods. They are the ones with powers. This entire village, they all have the blood of gods in them, some of them more strong than others, and they are the Jijakalu, which hopefully I'm saying right. They're the ones who can control water. The Matsuda family, which is the main family in the story, have a special bloodline technique called the Whispering Blade, which outside of Kaigen is generally thought of as a myth, along with some other rare powers that have not been seen in person or for a long time. But one of the things that the old warrior houses try to do is keep pure bloodlines. The more pure the bloodline, the more powerful the magic, and that is what brings Misaki, the main character, to Kaigen. She gets married into the Matsuda family to bear powerful sons. So I went into this book mostly for Misaki. Misaki is the mom. She is the character who put part of her old self away to become a wife and mother. Wife and mother in an old traditional fashion is her new life. Now on the back it talks about her son Mamaru, and the book starts with Mamaru, so you think it's going to be more about him, but he is not the main character. We get point of view chapters from him, but it's really more about Misaki. In fact, that's part of what was a little confusing. There were some weird pacing things in this book. So it starts with Mamaru going to school. Running up a mountain, he meets the new kid from the big city who comes into this old traditional kind of tribal style life. He makes the comment that he feels like he's in one of those old samurai movies. And the boys go into their school together where they learn fighting, magic, the history of Kaigen. And so it gives the impression that this is going to be a young adult magic school story. And you stick with Mamaru and follow him and his friend for quite a while. You get a little bit of Misaki kind of introducing her and the situation she's in, what it's like with her family and her kids and her husband and her friends. But starting the story with Mamaru, who doesn't end up being the main character, there was a big shift a little ways in. It also started with a lot of character introduction, some history. I'm going to say it had a pretty slow start. And it was a little confusing starting with that character, building him up to then shift away from him to not being the main character anymore. And then, about 100 pages in, the pace does start to pick up with some of Misaki's backstory. That gives us some more action, a deeper look into her history and how some of the magic works. And then, again, with the weird pacing, this is definitely a character-driven story. It's not really plot-driven or action-driven. This book really comes to a crescendo in the middle. It's about 600 pages, and around 200 pages in, some of the heavy action begins, and it feels like the story is at its peak, and then you come off that peak and it slows way down for the final third of the book, which I did feel like was a weird choice. But as long as you go in knowing that that crescendo is not what the story is about, it is about the characters and the journey of the self from beginning to end. If you go in knowing that, you shouldn't be disappointed when the ending is so slow and it kind of feels like it takes a long time to wrap up, because it's not about wrapping up the plot, it's about wrapping up the characters. There's kind of a big theme of acceptance, and some characters find it and some don't. And some of it is very painful. A lot of the main conflicts are not the bigger picture thing. Like, the big picture conflict is kind of what happens in the middle, and then the rest is a lot more personal. What each character is having to deal with and come to resolution in their own life. There's characters who feel like they can never measure up, who maybe feel like they can't accept their life how it is now, or who are having trouble letting go of the past. Part of Misaki's struggle is that she had some excitement in her life, some things that she was doing that she thought was really cool, and then that all had to be set aside. In this old-fashioned, traditional place, men and women have very different roles. There's just accepted sexism in the world. The purpose of the men, especially the powerful Theonites, is to protect. It's to become the best fighter they can possibly be, so if war ever comes, if their home is ever in danger, they are strong enough to protect their home and their families. The purpose of the women is to care for the home and the children. And that is difficult for Misaki. I'll go into it more when I go into the deep dive, but her father was a little less than traditional in the way that he raised her, and her mom. They let her do things that she would not have been allowed to do if she had grown up here in the Sword of Kaigen, and this new life is really a struggle for her. She has no idea how to interact with her husband, with her children, and I'm trying not to be offended personally. The author is now about the age that Misaki is in the story, young 30s, which is younger than I am right now. And she keeps talking about how old she's getting, how her body doesn't work like it used to. She can't do all the stuff she used to be able to do. She's not that old yet. To be fair, she's had more children at this point than I have, but it's fine. I also never went jumping roof to roof swinging swords or anything. The fight scenes are pretty cool because they involve the magic that the Theonites have. Their magic comes from the gods through their bloodline, and they have like a magical core within them that they draw on to do their magic. And the more they practice, the stronger their bloodline, the more they understand of how their magic works, the more interesting things they can do. There's also different bloodline techniques like the Whispering Blade, as well as some other ones that come up later. Ice swords, ice spears, anything you could think of to do with water they can do. I also read on Wang's website that she works at a martial arts school, which is really cool because I think her knowledge really shows through in those fight scenes and in how the young people have to practice, and things like watch how you're holding your shoulders, or watch how you're holding your hand, or whatever. How much power you have to put into a swing versus how much control. I think it's really fun when an author has knowledge about something in their story and you can tell that they're knowledgeable about it. So overall, I thought it was a good story. Knowing there are some dark things, knowing the pacing might be not what you're used to, and knowing that it's character driven, I think will really help inform whether you want to read this and your enjoyment of it if you do read it. I will link Wang's website in the description, and happy reading. Bye.